for a proper business plan. Yeah, that's it for me.
All right, awesome. Yolanda, you want to go ahead? Or maybe stop with Yolanda. It's the last sort of comment I'll get, and then we'll get started.
Hi, everyone. Today, I guess I'm just looking to get insight in how to just get started as an entrepreneur, where to start thinking, how to go about your ideation, and how to get off the ground. So yeah, just to get insight into that.
Yeah, nice. Tony, you want to read the comment on the chat?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, Lucky Masemola says, hi to everyone. I am Lucky. I am looking forward to understanding what solid business idea looks like. Additionally, I want to gain insight into common challenges faced during the innovation process.
Lovely. Thanks. Awesome. So you all said some interesting things. I think that a lot of them are linked to where you are personally and what kind of barriers you feel you'll experience, and hence you have that expectation. And also learning a thing, as you mentioned earlier, is a good thing as well. And we are collectively going to be working together just to unpack what it is, because I think it's also, especially if you're undergrad, it's very helpful for your studies. Getting into undergrad, there's going to be a lot of, it's like a huge transition from, high school, into the university space. It's some of the stuff we're going to talk about might not resonate right now, but you will definitely probably come back to this presentation a bit later and be like, oh, I remember that little thing we spoke about. Or when you start doing community engagement as well, you might be like, oh, there's that little thing we spoke about here and there, or whatever. That might be quite interesting. But yeah, so we'll get started. So anybody have an idea what it is, what an entrepreneurial mindset is? Just randomly view on the chat. If you are online, you can just unmute and just speak if you want to. But in the room, maybe anybody have an idea what it might be? What do you think the entrepreneurial mindset is?
Entrepreneurial mindset. I think it's the ability to sustain not only yourself but other people around you, in a sense whereby it's not only tied to the job, but to, in a sense whereby your innovation is able to provide resources for yourself to sustain for a long term.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So I think it's the ability to identify a niche in business and come up with a solution for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, any last takers? We'll take one more comment. I'll just pick on somebody randomly online there. Let's see, I'll pick, hey. Patrick, you want to go ahead? What do you think an entrepreneurial mindset is? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick. I think an entrepreneurial mindset is someone who can get and maybe identify a niche and try to solve maybe a problem in the community. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so there's been some interesting thoughts around the room. I must tell you a funny story. Once I was doing my honors once, and the professor kept on talking about be critical, have a critical mindset, And I heard this so many times in the class, and I was wondering what they're like talking about, So I went to ask him afterwards. I'm like, Prof, I don't quite understand. Like, after this course, when I'm done with this program, will I then be a critical thinker? Or like it's something that sort of just comes upon you or whatever. And he's like, oh, that's a good question. Because I heard this like cute word being thrown around, and I wasn't sure how it would actually look. So he said, no, it's just the ability just to question things. So you always have to embrace it, so to speak, right? Being a critical thinker, you always, if you hear something, kind of question everything you hear. That's the starting point of being a critical thinker. Is this the only way of looking at something, or there's like different ways of looking at something? Is this the only way of thinking about the world, or there's different ways of thinking about the world? When you're looking at problems, is this the only solution to the problem, or is this the only way of describing the problem, right? So there's different ways of thought and different ways of looking at things. So I think that was something that stood out to me in the sense that when I was preparing for this, I thought, what is entrepreneurial mindset? Is it something that's just going to come upon you, or is it something that you sort of like have to embrace and like constantly be putting on as you go? So we'll find out as we go. Yeah, so the entrepreneurial mindset basically has to do a lot with like three things. And a lot of it has to do with thinking. That's the cognition. So entrepreneurs are always thinking about how best do they make the world a better place, or how best can we run things a little bit better? How best can we look at education, for example? I think in COVID-19, we learned that, yes, it's great to be at class, but also we've got this online hybrid learning that we can actually use, and it can actually work. And a lot of people never really imagined we could be going to class online, and we actually did a lot of that. And then there's also the entrepreneurial emotion, like, because the entrepreneurial journey is not isolated from how you feel. Your journey in class is not isolated to how you feel, because when you're in class, you're around class and you're like, I actually feel like I don't understand anything. Like, I was in a stats class once, research stats, and I didn't know what was going on there, like literally. But the emotions that triggered for me was like, I felt like I'm out of place, I felt like maybe I'm not smart enough, like there was like a lot of doubts going on in my mind. And then the behavior is basically the action side of things, right? Entrepreneurship is, as a verb, it's like a doing word, right? It's like, you're not just talking entrepreneurship like what we're doing today, but hopefully if I'm talking entrepreneurship today, will inspire you to go out and act entrepreneurially, so to speak. So there's some of the stuff that I think you'll be able to reflect on today, and then hopefully tap into it as well, because it's one thing to know what it is, but then hopefully I can give you the keys to tap into it as well. So I think there's a famous saying that goes around that the mind is everything. What you think, you become, and how you view yourself is very important. Like, if you think of yourself to be inadequate, you'll slowly feel like you're an inadequate person, and then you'll start behaving in that way. I think that's the premise of that sort of quote. But really, the entrepreneurial mindset is the mental perspective. Like, it's the process of how we think about stuff. And there's a lot of myths around, like, entrepreneurs, people that are born, entrepreneurs, people that, is it a select group of people, or can anybody be an entrepreneur? So there's a lot of myths that are around innovation, creativity, and so on. For a long time, I never used to think like I was a creative person, because I thought, you had to be a certain kind of person to be creative. But that's essentially not true, right? So you essentially can be creative, you can be entrepreneurial. You just have to start believing in yourself, like you can actually be that kind of person, or start associating yourself to be a person that is creative, or a person that is a solution-oriented person. And before you know it, you'll be able to start seeing the world a little bit differently. But yeah, a lot of people don't tend to think that they can act entrepreneurially. They always think that it's only for a select group of people. It's like similar in class. You have a lot of people that come to the university, sometimes might be very quiet, but they actually know the answer, but they won't put their hand up in class, right? And then you have the other guys that are there just putting up their hand the whole time. They come across like they're actually smart, but in essence, it's just a belief thing that I don't think I can put my hand up. But if you start doing more of that, then you start realizing that, oh, wow, I'm actually smarter than the next person, because I had that contribution to make in class. So entrepreneurship is somewhat the same. It's more about how we think about ourselves and how we think about the people around us. So there's around the entrepreneurial mindset, there's like a triangle I'm going to show you shortly, which is basically what we call the Triad, which reflects the entrepreneurial mindset. And it basically reflects, again, like, we're constantly in this triangle of like thinking as individuals, when in a triangle of thought, when a triangle of feelings, when a triangle of action. So for you to come here today, it required a bit of action. For you to get out of your room, you felt like, maybe I could stay there because it's a bit cold today. I don't feel like coming out here. And then all of that is like all interlinked. For the person online, you might have just thought, well, let me just get onto the session, but then there was still an action involved, there was a feeling involved, and there was also a thought involved. So there's this triangle that's constantly at play, and something that you should always think about around your studies as well. Think about how, if you get a 20% in your first test at the university, how that's going to make you feel, and what kind of action it's going to trigger. Right. So I remember the first SUP, the only SUP I ever wrote when I was in undergrad was for economics, supplementary exam. When I wrote that, I remember like saying to myself, I'm never going to write a supplementary again, because that was like the idea of like having to stay around when everyone's gone home to write an exam again. So that triggered feelings and triggered an action from my side. So I'm just trying to paint pictures of how the entrepreneurial mindset is not just linked to entrepreneurship alone, but like it can integrate into your studies. It can sort of spill over into your studies and your personal life. So yeah, that's just a triangle you should think about. So let's just start first with the cognitive aspect. What do you think the cognitive aspect has to do with? Any takers in the room? Yeah.
The way you process things and how you decide to take decisions in your business, your action, your behavior in business.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's going in between your ears. It's the cognitive side. Obviously, Dr. Louise would be very well versed than I am to talk about the mind because she's a psychologist. But in essence, paying attention, remembering things, producing and understanding language, solving problems, and making decisions. That's all part of the process. And then the way you process information, the way you apply that knowledge, the way you view that knowledge is what drives your thinking around an issue. So if you're thinking about the entrepreneurial experience, it's like the entrepreneurial thinking. It's basically, how do you make decisions as a person? How do you evaluate an opportunity? Because all of this has to do with processing information, and all of that happens between your ears. Like you would never know what you don't know unless you know what you know. Like you would, if somebody doesn't come and tell you, hey, listen, there's a place there that's selling sweets, you would never go and buy sweets there, right? But because somebody gives that information, then you'll probably do that. So I think the biggest thing is that once you get that information, once you make those judgments, once you start processing that information or synthesizing that information that you get of what would call the market or from people around, then that's what triggers you to evaluate an opportunity, because you think, hey, there's an opportunity over there. And you think you might start a venture, start a business. And then hopefully from that business, you want to grow, you want to make more sales, you want to buy more stuff, you want to make more profit. So that's basically a simple way of thinking about the importance of thinking and knowledge and the role knowledge plays in our thinking about issues. So a big part of an entrepreneur as well is that they're very adaptable in their thinking, and they're also quite dynamic in their thinking, also very flexible in their thinking as well, very self-regulating, which is very important because an entrepreneur has to deal with things that are unknown most of the times. So if you're starting a business in something that you've never done before, a lot of the stuff you're going to be doing is going to be learning, but also it's also going to be a lot of unlearning and a lot of like relearning as well, because you might have certain assumptions about things. And then when you start, then you realize, oh, well, that's not actually how it works. We've had a lot of that with some of the scholars who are part of the Scholars Entrepreneurship Fund. They would have an idea, and then when they kickstarted, then they realize, well, actually, what I thought what it was is actually not, what it is. So then there's a lot of like flexibility. So it's good to have ideas. It's good to have like a sense of thinking, but it's not something that you should be like rigid about. So let's look at the behavioral aspect, right? Behavioral aspect has a lot to do with like the intentions and motivation that comes with the learning that's happening. So if you are motivated, if you're learning information you're getting from the brain, thinking and all that, it requires a bit of like, it triggers your behavior in certain ways. Some people will say, no, that's not something I want to pursue. Some people will say, oh, well, I think that's something I can pursue. But that's something to think about. So your thoughts, your intentions, motivations, the learnings, the intelligence without action does not create any economic value. So we can just sit here and talk all day about business opportunities, but then if we don't actually try them out, then we can't create economic value. If the founders of the university just spoke about building a university and they never built it, we would not be sitting here today, right? It would just still be an idea with the founders. And the same is with us, like as scholars, as scholar alumni, we have these conversations we have with our friends and these thoughts that we have, but if we don't really act on them, and acting on them can be simple, like, hey, let me put together a little presentation, let me put my thoughts on a paper, let me start telling my friends about this, because you're going to get like this, what we call 360 feedback. And that sometimes helps to make you think about your business. So that's the behavior part, right? Like the action is very important. So there's also a conversation that happens a lot around opportunities being discovered versus being created. How many of you feel like opportunities are discovered? Maybe you can raise hands if you feel like an opportunity is discovered. All right. How many of you feel like an opportunity is actually created? Yeah. So what's the difference between the two? Yeah.
I think, yes, opportunity can be discovered as well. But it is best to create opportunity in the sense that you have control of everything. But opportunity discovered, there are a lot. We can meet with a lot of uncertainties. So that's why personally I think I prefer to create opportunity than to see or try to source for opportunities.
Anybody think that opportunity discovered? Like basically when, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like opportunities are created by people who believe or something.
Yeah, that's right. So discovery. So a lot of people think that they'll just sit and one day there's something out there for them. They will just walk into it. I'm studying right now. My main focus is just school. I just want to get through the school. Once I get my cum laude, I'm going to be happy. And then one day somewhere there's something waiting for me out there. Versus, hey, I'm here studying my cum laude. I've got my friends around me in class. I've got my friends at Res. I've got my friends in the scholars program. How best can we create something with all the skills that we all have collectively as a people, right? So, so I would encourage you to think about it like that. How can you go about creating something as opposed to waiting on something to land? Because chances are that could happen by luck. You know, sometimes you'll have to get lucky. But I don't know if you've ever heard somebody, a famous golfer called Gary Player. Have you ever heard about him? Anybody? Oh, he's a famous South African golf legend. He basically is known for the quote where he says that the more I practice, the luckier I get. You know, so I think the more you attempt to, if I'm to borrow his quote, like the more you attempt to create, the more luck you create for yourself as well in the process, as opposed to just waiting. So all of that will then obviously inspire action and so on. So we'll carry on. And so we'll look at like the opportunity discovery and opportunity creation from the perspective of your behavior. So this is basically the extent to which you can bring like a new product or a new service to the market. One thing is based on prior knowledge, as I mentioned earlier. Your ability to identify an opportunity or miss an opportunity all hinges on what you know. Once you identify an opportunity, I think that opportunity would then determine if you'll get into the process of starting a business venture or working towards starting a business venture. And, you know, a lot of people tend to think that entrepreneurs are like just pre-existing people. Like, you'll get people that get a lot of great marks in school and you think, no, those people are just born like that. But I think they actually put in the work. They put in the effort of like becoming great students. So same with entrepreneurs, like entrepreneurs that don't just pre-exist somewhere. Like they're not in a you know place somewhere where they're just born. They're actually people that actually become entrepreneurs. It's like a lived experience. And creating the venture is what makes you the entrepreneur. But then you can be a person with an entrepreneurial mindset who then taps into creating a venture, and that journey of you creating a venture makes you a entrepreneur. So you can be a student accepted to study here, like what you're all accepted here, but then you actually have to be on campus and be a student and live out the student experience. So, but for you to live out the student experience, you need to have the opportunity to study. So you must have the entrepreneurial mindset, which gears you to be able to cope with the entrepreneurial journey, because it is a difficult journey, right? So that's something to always think about, that the opportunities don't always emerge. The venture just doesn't emerge, and you as an entrepreneur don't always emerge. You actually kind of choose to become that, and it's predetermined. The idea that it's predetermined is not true. You actually have to pursue it. And then again, so entrepreneurial action is driven by knowledge, what you know, what motivates you. All those things lead to what we call an opportunity. So the knowledge that you get, right? The drive that you have, the motivation you have as a person, that's all those things together create what they call a third person opportunity. So that's an opportunity for you that you can pursue, as opposed to, so all of it those three elements are interlinked. So you're not just a person that's going to be thinking about stuff without having the drive. You got to have the drive. You got to have the thought process. And through all that, you'll then create an opportunity for yourself. So yeah, that kind of covers the elements around our opportunities created or our opportunities just discovered. And I think an important part is like understanding the dynamic process of the journey, in that it involves you having a vision, wanting to see change. It involves you wanting to apply your energy in the process, your passion towards what you're learning about, what you're studying in terms of like the marketplace, what you're seeing there, what gaps you're seeing. And really entrepreneurs are people that look at chaos, contradiction, confusion as like opportunity. So when there's a lot of chaos, a lot of people tend to, oof, I'm not going to get involved in that. But then some people are like, hey, well, in the midst of chaos, there's definitely an opportunity for me. So I'll give you an example. You'll find that no matter which country you go to, no matter how poor the country is, there's always like rich people. All right. And the way I explain that is that within the midst of like disorder and chaos and uncertainty, there's a lot of opportunity there. But not everybody's got the entrepreneurial mindset to see that, and the entrepreneurial mindset to pursue that opportunity. So yes, whilst the economy affects all of us, people respond to it in different ways. Some people tend to still see gaps in the economy and they still pursue them. So it's quite an interesting interplay of like thinking of your emotions, your thinking, and your actions. So let's look a little bit at the emotion aspect. So if I was to ask you now, how are you feeling emotionally right now? Let's go around the room quickly. Like, how are you feeling emotionally? Let's start on the left. Like, how are you feeling?
How to be excited, but I'm just eager.
You're eager. Okay.
Feeling good and positive.
Good and positive. What emotions are you feeling, Obi?
Just open-minded, just grab any opportunity.
Yeah. You feeling positive? You just feeling
Neutral.
neutral.
I'm very optimistic. I'm willing to explore.
Right.
I'm excited.
Hopeful and motivated.
I'm excited.
I'm feeling a bit inquisitive.
Inquisitive. Don't know how you're feeling.
Well, I wasn't expecting that question, but yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. Maybe I'll ask the other staff members how they're feeling.
Here, I think I'm inspired. Yeah. And I'm impressed.
Yeah. So why am I asking you all these things? You need to be aware of the emotions, right? Because they trigger how you're going to act and your thinking. So yeah, sure.
So I was thinking as you explained, because the model is very psychological.
It is very, yeah.
Actually, to explain psychology and how it affects behavior. So I was wondering, in all of this, an opportunity, how does a person overcome risk? You know, some people are more risk averse than others. How can you use your psychology to actually embrace an opportunity and not run away from it? If you're more risk, you have more aversion to risk, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, very good question. So, yeah, Dr. Louise is asking about the link between risk taker and being risk averse and how to use this triangle of the entrepreneurial mindset to overcome that. So I had an interesting conversation. So I when I started entrepreneurship, I realized that in the class, there are these professors who are risk averse teaching entrepreneurship. I thought that is very bizarre, right? But then obviously the entrepreneur, like I said, the entrepreneurial journey is more like an action thing. So for them, they are maybe like risk averse because they don't have the ability to actually pursue an opportunity. But what they're actually doing, they're actually studying people that are willing to take that risk. So I think, Eloise, a lot of it is to do with like your ability to deal with those stresses that come with the emotional stress. Yeah, there's coping mechanisms. I'm going to get into those shortly. But again, it's still, we'll get into more detail shortly about like how typical entrepreneurs tend to think. Like you'll see later that a lot of entrepreneurs will still have the world going no, and then they keep on saying yes. So an example is somebody like the people that created the first search engine, right? People said, can you imagine a place where there's everything in the internet? Does that even exist? Where you can find one place where you can find all the information in the world. Like when they started that in the 90s, people thought these guys are bizarre. Like that doesn't exist, right? Like, but then amidst everyone saying no, they eventually got it right because they kept on trying it. And then as you try, you're learning and you're finding better ways to innovate. I think they're the Wright brothers that invented the plane. Like if you look at their models, how they started with the plane was like very, the way they evolved from like the attempts they had at first to where they eventually got it right. I mean, everyone was saying these guys are crazy. Like, you know, it's not going to happen. So yes, it is a lot of like self-belief and a lot of like self-reflection to get feedback about what you're doing and then realizing, well, maybe actually this is not the right way to go about it, and then finding new ways to go about it. So, but yes, it does require a lot of like emotional back and forth, being agile and dynamic in your thinking. So typically, like when I went around the room, everyone was explaining more emotions of like joy and excitement, enthusiasm, and those are typically linked to like a single event, like right now, right in this moment, you feel that way. And then some of them are more negative, which could be distress, which could be nervousness, like maybe having to do a presentation. That could be something that could be very nerve-wracking. It could be, again, it's a single event. But then the entrepreneurial journey is a continuous event, like a continuous journey with a lot of single isolated events. So as you journey in the process, you will feel a spike and a drop in different emotions. But then you must always remember that, you know, it's not like something that defines you in the process, because you still remain resolute towards your opportunity. So there's an interesting aspect as well that comes in when you experience entrepreneurial failure, when you talk about entrepreneurial ego. So because the entrepreneur is so committed to this thing that they try so hard that if they fail, there's like an entrepreneurial ego as well. So it kind of hurts their ego a little bit in the process. And sometimes people envelope. Entrepreneurs like to work alone and they get into their own shell because sometimes they feel like people don't really understand what they're working on. So those feelings are pretty normal. So just being aware of the fact that all those things are normal. And as you know, entrepreneurship is a big risk. So let's look at it from an emotional perspective, how it looks as an emotional risk. So they're the four main things that drive entrepreneurial risk from an emotional perspective. The financial risk. How many people do you know that are successful entrepreneurs that have been bankrupt before? A lot, right? Yeah, some people have been bankrupt twice. And they still keep going back at it. So there's a financial risk where, for example, in your case, if you were to take a portion of your stipend and save that, at the end of the year, maybe you've got like 5,000 Rand, for example, just making an example, and you decide you're going to start something. So if you want to start something with your 5,000 Rand, your hard-earned and your hard savings for the year, for 12 months, and then you try something and after 2 days, you lose all that money, right? That's a risk, right? So that's that. So some people save millions in the process, and then they tell they decide, okay, let me take all my savings and put it to this business. Let me take all my retirement money and put it into this business. Like that's a huge risk, right? So one, not a lot of people are willing to do that because of the emotional stress that comes with it. Two, there's also like a career risk, right? If you're what I just want to ask randomly, what's your dream job? Like, what would you say is your dream job? You say what? Working with youth organizations as a manager. So she wants to be work with youth organizations as a manager. And interesting, is that when you work, you're going to be able to maybe get a car, get a house, and have kids, get clothes, get whatever you want. If you feel like stopping for a drive-through at KFC, you can do all of that because you can afford it, right? Because you have the job and you have the money for it. But that comes with the risk. So if you decide, well, I want to pursue this opportunity and I'm going to stop my career just for this opportunity, you're actually foregoing all those other options that you have to pursue this opportunity. So with entrepreneurship can come a career risk. I don't want to make this example because it's not really good, but I'll make it anyway. There's a lot of people that, like right now, your career is to be a scholar and to be a student in academics right now. But some people have decided they're going to drop out of school and pursue that opportunity. So they're foregoing a possible qualification in the process. So that's a risk that comes with this. Like there's a lot of emotional risk of like, well, what if I make the wrong decision? What if I'm making the right decision? What if it does work out? What if it doesn't work out? And then much later, if you have family, if you have kids and children, some people, I've heard stories of people who are, married, were kids, had a good job, and then decide, Tony,
sorry.
Tony's unmuted his phone. I'm echoing. All right, thanks. Sorry, it's fine. So a lot of people have done that before. They have a family and they decide, listen, I'm going to stop and just go and pursue this opportunity. And that creates a lot of family risk, right? In the sense that you are risking the whole family for your pursuit, for your vision, and like for this opportunity you want to pursue. So that's one thing. So you can actually rob a family experience of your kids going to school with a lot of peace because you're pursuing this opportunity. Maybe some people had to relocate countries to pursue an opportunity. Many of you have taken that risk. You've left your home country to come here and study. So you've already experienced risk. First year, what emotions did you experience when you got here? When you left home to come and study here? You excited? Yeah. Yeah. But there's definitely, like you see, there's a positive emotion, then there's a negative emotion, and it's about containing those emotions in a way that they don't become extreme. Because entrepreneurs also tend to have the extreme where they believe that everything they're going to do is going to work. And that's not how life works. And some people have a strong sense of belief that, whatever I'm going to do is definitely going to work. And they're staying on this one side, which is sometimes not reality. And you can lose a lot of money in the process and so on. So that creates a bit of like psychic risk. Actually, that negative impact, if it's severe, it will have a very negative psychological impact on that person. They'd have to go to sit with Miss Eloise the whole time and talk to her about this experience to try and find a way out, right? So that's why the program is also great, because we have in our psychologists to support you with your needs. So a big part of it is like, okay, Lennox, you've said all these things. How can I deal with the risks, right? Emotionally speaking. So the common risk is the fact that entrepreneurs tend to want a lot of liberty and like a lot of freedom. And they also tend to want to find a lot of satisfaction in their work. And they're also willing to tolerate as much stress as they can just to get that goal. So how many of you have had all-nighters before when you're studying? Quite a lot of you, right? You've gone out to not sleep much because you want to get that distinction, I hope. I'm not trying to save the semester. I want to get the distinction. So like that is what you're willing to do to actually get your goal. And entrepreneurs tend to be very goal-driven. And what actually happens is that in the process, you start feeling a bit of like what they call discrepancies between your expectations and what's really happening. Because as an entrepreneur, you'll find that maybe when you're starting a business, right now, if you're going to participate in SEF, you're going to worry between your studies, you're going to worry between your personal life with your friends, and you're going to be stressing about your studies and also just like with your friends and your family, just being in touch with them. So that means that you're going to be worried about wearing multiple hats. So you're going to be wearing your scholar hat, you're going to be wearing your entrepreneur hat. If you're running your business from back at home, you're going to be worrying about the people you engaging with or the projects you're leading with people back at home. Or if you're the team lead in the project, you're going to be worried about managing all the people to make sure that on Tuesday, when Tony says he's going to go and, he's going to go and do certain things for the business, he actually does it, you know. And if Tony wakes up and he's not feeling well, then you know you have to step in and do that. So as an entrepreneur, you're always wearing multiple hats. In the long term, when you actually grow your business, you're going to worry about compliance with HR, you're going to worry about legal, you're going to probably hire a legal team to help you with certain things. You're going to hire a marketing person to help you with marketing aspects of the business. You're going to hire a sales team if you're selling products to help you with pushing volumes. So there's all those many other components you would have to worry about. But if you have the privilege to hire people much later when you make enough money, that's great. But in the meantime, you're going to figure everything out yourself and you're going to be doing everything by yourself. So a big thing that we've also seen as well is that a lot of entrepreneurs experience high levels of stress. So how do you then cope with it? So I wonder how you guys cope with stress right now. What do? Sleep? What? Listen to music? Punch balls? Talk it out with friends? Cry? That's good. That actually works. Any other thoughts or how you cope with stress? Yeah, playing video games. Yeah, just you escape a little bit. Any other things? Talk to yourself. Interesting. So very good things, by the way. And a big part of stress, coping with stress, is firstly acknowledging it. Remember, we're talking a lot about the mind, being self-aware, self-regulating, regulating, right? So the ability to do that, that's why I asked you how you're feeling. All of you just showed me that you know how to self-regulate because you can tell me how you're feeling, which is good. And you must now be able to now determine, listen, I'm stressed, which is a good starting point. And then you told me about how you cope with stress. You mentioned a couple of different things. And then also facing the fact that there's certain things that you need to do that you can't do. Acknowledging all of those things is great. And then trying to figure out how you can get support and help, you know. But don't operate in a silo. Don't operate by yourself. Always have people around you. And another important thing that none of you mentioned, to my surprise though, but I know a lot of you do, which is exercise. It's very good. Entrepreneurs tend to, there's also a lot of research we found that actually speaks to prove that point that entrepreneurial stress can be handled very well by exercise, either weightlifting or running, or whatever it might be. It has a positive impact on just coping with that stress. So it gives an entrepreneur a sense of intrinsic and extrinsic reward in the process, which is something to consider. And I think just in terms of stress management in general, not just really linked to entrepreneurship, like with your studies as well, if you went for a walk. So I want to sort of look now into how do you tap into the entrepreneurial mindset, right? I know we've spoken a lot about different scenarios, but Louise asked the point earlier about the person who's risk averse. So let's link the triangle together now, right? So let's say we've got a person, and also something to think about when it comes to teams as well. So if you've got a person who's action avoidant, that person, if that person doesn't want to pursue an opportunity, it will probably decrease that person's desire for entrepreneurship, pursuing an opportunity. They're not going to be so interested, and it will most probably decrease their chances of pursuing a business opportunity. So think about it like this. If you all of a sudden got cut off, no stipend, no allowance, nothing. And the next question is how am I going to survive, right? That's the first question that comes to your mind. How am I going to survive? You're going to start thinking of different ways to survive. What do I need to do to get money? When you start thinking about what do I need to do to get money, you're going to start thinking about the passion, the drive that you have to get money. That's what's going to drive you to start seeing opportunities. So the more you don't take action, the more it stifles your ability to actually pursue something. And then another person, by the other hand, if you've got maybe somebody who's not allowed to explore and express their passions in entrepreneurship and other emotions related to entrepreneurship. So, in some African countries, not really African, some countries in the world, they actually don't allow women to go to school, right? So what does it actually do? It means that there's less women thinking about going to school, and there's less women who will probably make moves to go to school. So same with entrepreneurship. If you're not allowed to think about it like that, you won't probably pursue entrepreneurship. And then on the other hand, you have people that are very scared to take risks. And and to explore them. You'll find those people will find it very difficult to sustain any kind of emotion that comes with taking an entrepreneurial action. So it's about understanding that you might find yourself being able to take risks, but then struggling on the action side. You might find yourself being able to deal with the emotions of uncertainty and stress and pressure, but then you might find it very difficult to actually act and pursue an opportunity and to do the homework to think about where's that gap and so on. So that's why when you think of teams, that's why I encourage you to work in teams to figure out, maybe we've got a person like Tony who's in my team who might be very, who's a big risk taker. And then it's like, oh, we've got somebody who can handle the emotions a bit better. And then we've got somebody who is very sharp at thinking and looking at things differently. You know, that's a great team to have because you guys all complement each other. But individually, all these things interplay and they all complement each other. So I just want to figure out if you guys have any questions at this point, just around what we've discussed. Any questions online, perhaps, before I carry on? So I carry on. So the entrepreneurial mindset, big part of it is to develop your entrepreneurial mindset. There's many things that I've come across that I think will help you. I'll just scan through these quickly. So just embrace challenges. So if you experience a bit of a problem, don't panic, just relax, just embrace it. And what does embracing the challenge mean? Learn more about it. What does this actually mean? What am I learning from this? All right. And then try and break down some of the tasks. So who's doing a research dissertation now, or research dissertation? Quite a couple of you, right? If you're undergrad, you'll get to that point probably in your third year. You might do a mini research project, and then your honors, you'll do a mini dissertation, and your masters, you also do more research. So it's quite a giant elephant. So sometimes you can't think of swallowing an elephant, but you can budget to bring it down day by day for a year. And that's how you're going to bring it down. So same as like embracing challenges, because sometimes it's just quite a lot that you have to look at it in like small bits. Just think about things creativity, and be innovative about your problems. So think about new ways you can look at the issues. Consider solutions you can look at. Just look beyond the norm. Like you might find something there to generate some ideas. Brainstorm with your friends. That also helps. Anybody know what SMART stands for, the acronym? You guys want to go for it? Yeah, exactly. So sometimes we're very unspecific about what we want. Like I know I'm guilty of it sometimes. I want certain things, but I don't know, how specific is that? Like I want to start a business, great, but what business do you want to start? You can start a business in anything. So you have to be very sharp, like specific in terms of, okay, I want to start a business in agriculture, particularly focusing on new ways of urban farming. So I'm going to look at maybe looking at vertical gardening as my solution. There you go. That's specific, right? And then I think about how do I then go about measuring that, attaining that, and then is it realistic and how much time do we need? So you guys know these acronyms as well. So, and then building resilience. So do you think resilience is something that you build or something that you have? Like as a person, is it something that you're born with? Both ways, yeah. Yeah. Who remembers when they were back in grade 1? Do you remember when you went to school, grade 1? I don't know why they call it in other countries, but grade 1, your first day of like primary school. What were you actually learning back then? How to read aloud? What else were you guys learning? Math? Yeah, those kind of things. So, I mean, how overwhelming was that back then? If you would go back down that road. You can't remember. It was quite daunting, right? But think about it now. You're in university. Like, you don't worry about 1 + 1. You don't, right? But you've built over the last 10 years or something resilience to, as the teachers are adding more load to your brain, you've built the resilience, you've built the muscle of your brain to cope with it. And same as with entrepreneurship. We're going to start micro level, like what we're doing now, doing these presentations. We're going to go build the business plan. And then you're going to present in front of a panel of judges. And that's going to be like, oof, I never thought I'd do this. But again, we are taking you through the steps so that you can build. And I think about it with your studies as well. Like there's a reason there's first year to third year and fourth year or whatever, because they can't just give everything at once, right? It builds your resilience. Then just taking initiative and being proactive. Don't just wait to, go about it and get to it. And then we'll build your financial acumen. So I know a lot of the times you need to figure out if the business is viable. You can't just pursue everything, because I would love to go to Mars, for example, but I can't afford it. That's why Elon Musk is doing it, because he's got the resources for it, but I can probably start a tuck shop because I can probably afford to do it. So it's having the awareness of like what's viable and what's feasible and what people would actually be interested in. And then just embracing failure. Like, who enjoys failing? Yeah, nobody enjoys failing. But when you do fail, as sucky as that is, it's horrible, but you have to try and find ways to learn. And a big part of entrepreneurship is pivoting. It's pivoting. So if you start a business, sometimes targeting, I once started an app a couple of years ago, and we were targeting the link between how we can get the average user to access fitness facilities through an app. But then because of what we learned in the market, we learned that, this app can actually evolve and become a central platform to give people information about different platforms in their environment, just because we had so many problems, right? So there's always opportunity to pivot. And then cultivating emotional intelligence, which a lot of you already have. So just building that sense of like strong relationships with people, helping you to lead effectively, that helps to build your emotional intelligence in the process. Just being aware of your feelings, being aware of other people's feelings, being aware of how to act around people when they're feeling a certain way, and having the ability to know that maybe it's not a great idea for me to answer the phone when I'm feeling this way right now. That's part of emotional intelligence. Maybe it's not a great idea to go have that conversation when I'm this furious, right, with that person. So that's all ways you can build. And then just practice being self-reflective. That helps. I think a lot of you do that with your studies. You've got a little gauge in your mind where, this week I haven't really studied hard. I'm going to have to push twice as hard next week. You've got that gauge in your mind. You also apply that gauge in your entrepreneurial journey as you go. And then just committing to lifelong learning, I think is very important to help you build that. So that's obviously how you can develop your entrepreneurial mindset. And a big part of that is creating an environment for us. It's creating an environment for you to be able to practice this. That's why we've got community engagement. That's why we've got giving back. That's why we've got the Scholars Entrepreneurship Fund. Next week, Monday, we're going to view the garden just on the side of campus there, just off the campus, not so far from here. That's a great platform for you to actually start. We're creating that for you so that you can practice these things, because experiential learning is one of the ways to do it. So not really sitting in these presentations like this, which is good because it sparks your curiosity, but in essence, actually going out there and doing, because the work is in the doing. So that brings us to the end of this entrepreneurial mindset slide. So I just want to figure out if there's any questions before we wrap up. Maybe anybody online got a thought or two, something that you want to ask? Unless I do the horrible thing of picking on random people. I hate that, but I'm going to do it. Thomas, you want to say something, buddy? Sorry, man. I'm just picking on you, but I know you got some thoughts, Thomas. If Thomas is online. I know you're on mute. Anybody else online that wants to go? Paula, you want to go?
Hi everyone.
Somebody takes the challenge. Yeah, thank you.
I don't really have a question, but I think what's in my mind at the moment is just to try to figure out just the whole process of thinking. Because when I came here, I kind of thought that I was struggling with just the whole process of, thinking about something, the process of actually getting to that point where you're like, that's the idea. So that's what's in my mind at the moment. I'm probably just going to have to go through the slides again and actually see if I've gotten at least a little bit more about that. Like just the process of actually thinking. I don't know if I'm making sense. Like,
Yeah.
what's that process? Do you get what I mean? Where do I go? What do I do? Do I go to a specific place where I'm surrounded by people that are entrepreneurs? Do I then come back and how do I serve with the many business ideas that I have? How do I then surf out and choose the specific one? I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah, that's what's in my head. How do I make the right judgment about a specific thing that I want to do? Yeah, I hope I'm making sense.
Sense you are making. Yeah, you're making a lot of sense. Anybody else with some thoughts online, perhaps, before we carry on? Okay, I'll take it as though there's no other thoughts there. So this brings us to the end of the Entrepreneurial Mindset. So we're doing these sessions weekly. So I think I've got 3 more sessions to come. Next week, we're going to look at inventions, ideas and inventions. We're actually going to do a few. We're practically going to work through one particular one. So that's going to be more, I'm going to give you pieces of paper. Then we're going to look at, you're going to work in groups, and then we'll figure out how best we can identify a problem around us on campus and res, and see how we can solve that problem. So we're going to go through the ideation process together. I wanted to do this today, but I figured, it's probably not a great idea, because I think it's much better to go through the invention and the ideation process whilst walking through the steps. So we'll do a lot of that next week. I'll send you this presentation from today, and I'll also send you the presentation for next week today as well, because it's basically this, I have it all, yeah. And I want you to look through that so that when we come next week, we can actually just get into the practical side of problem, how do we get to a solution? And then hopefully we can come up with some cool concepts, and then following week, we have another session around feasibility and viability. That's the financial side of things. Got this great idea, but then is it feasible? Is it viable? And then we'll look at those bits. But yeah, so that's it. We'll leave it here for today. We'll leave it on the Entrepreneurial Mindset. And then next week, we'll look specifically at ideation and how we can solve problems around us. Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining, and thanks for everybody who joined online. I will save this recording and I'll post it on YouTube so that you can all watch and reflect on it a little bit later. As I said, I'll share the slides too. So, gracias. Thank you.